So, in yesterday's class, we had started our discussion about what this course is all about. Okay, and if you recall, we did a lexical analysis of this course. I'll just quickly recall, till others also join. Some people are still joining. So the course has two parts: discrete mathematics and graph theory. And if I begin in the reverse chronology, graph theory is the study of graphs. Okay, and we discussed yesterday what is a graph. Graph is basically that kind of mathematical structure which can define pairwise relation between different objects. Okay, it's a mathematical structure which defines pairwise relations between different objects, and we saw that these objects could be anything, like it could be a person, it could be a PC, it could be a place. We saw different examples yesterday wherein we modeled a road network as a graph, a computer network as a graph, or a friend circle of in a class as a graph. So graph is a powerful structure which can denote pairwise relation between different objects. So it depends on you how you model that relation and what is that relation basis. And the study of all those structures and all the properties of such structures called graphs is known as graph theory. And what we discussed was graph theory is nothing new, but it's a subset of discrete mathematics. Okay, and with that, what is discrete mathematics? If you recall, discrete mathematics is the study of those mathematical structures which are essentially discrete. And by discrete, we mean something which is distinct, unique, or we can say it's unconnected. It's not connected. Okay, it's not continuous, right? You can easily differentiate it. And if you recall, what kind of objects we study in discrete mathematics, there are things like integers, you have statements in logic, or you have graphs. Anything which is discrete, not having a continuous flow, is what we call as a discrete structure. And all the mathematical structures which are discrete are under the study of discrete mathematics. Okay, so that was the lexical analysis that we had done. After that, what we started was, uh, why is discrete mathematics relevant to ordinary people? Okay, and we discussed. I'll just quickly skim through it. Uh, we saw some practical questions that can be answered via discrete mathematic topics in our day-to-day life. Okay, and after that, we also saw how discrete mathematics is related to computer science. Okay, and if you recall, I asked you two questions. One was how Google managed faster search engine, and what are the foundations of internet security. And if I recall, most of you came up with very nice terms and technologies which we hear in computer science IT, things like algorithms, data structures, cryptography, and whatnot, right? Which is exactly correct. But if you look at the foundation of these ideas, that is where discrete mathematics lies. Discrete mathematics forms the foundation of all these ideas. Okay, like the algorithm on which Google works is PageRank. And over the time, when you will study, this PageRank is nothing but modeling of graph, and it makes use of linear algebra. That's it. Those are the two fundamental techniques behind this concept. So at the end, this is a slide where we ended, which was why do we use? That's fine. Mathematics is important, and we can answer all these questions. But why discrete? Why not continuous mathematics? Okay, and there we had this answer that normally in computer science, when we deal with things, we always deal with finite objects. Okay, and the reason for that is because our computer has a limited capacity. Even if we deal with a supercomputer, still it has some limited capacity. Okay, and the best way we can know that limited capacity is when we talk about real numbers. If we talk about real numbers, we know that we can never store them with infinite precision. The precision by which we can store them will depend on what are the limitations of the computer we are using. And like, if any one of you has ever, by their interest, studied about supercomputers, when you compute the computing power of supercomputers, that is also done in terms of floating point numbers. Okay, uh, how many floating point numbers? Everyone understands a floating point number? In programming, you might have studied this. Does everyone know what is a okay, right? So floating point number is just a way of representation of real numbers, right? Which has a mantissa exponent notation. So if you like after this class, just have a look about supercomputers. You will see the way they quantify the performance of supercomputers is also based on how many floating point operations can that computer perform, which is also known as in short flops, floating point operations. So that actually shows you that how important is discreteness of our information or data for our computer science, because even powerful computers like supercomputers are also limited by this operation. Okay, so that actually brings us to discrete concept. Why we cannot have continuous mathematics, because we don't have the capability of processing such infinite things in our computers, right? And as I had mentioned at the end, this course is going to be the foundation for a lot of your subjects which you will study in this semester or in the coming semesters, and you will see you will be hitting on all these topics again and again in all of them. Okay, so that was kind of a recap of our what we had discussed yesterday. Now, what we are going to discuss today, there are two things actually. First thing is I'll be giving direct applications of the topics we are going to study. Like what are the direct applications of those topics, just for motivation, and then we'll see what are the final course objectives of this course. And then the second part will be introduction to LaTeX, which I had introduced yesterday, a document processing system. Okay. So before I proceed, any questions from the previous lecture, or any doubts you have? Anyone? Okay, please use chat for responding. Okay, no. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let us start then with our motivations of different topics that we are going to study. Okay, so first major topic that we are going to study in this course is something about proof and logic. Okay, so that's one of the most important modules in this course, proof and logic. Okay, so if I talk about proof and logic, basic idea behind studying proof and logic is to understand how computers think. Okay, like if I give some intelligence to computers, how are they able to process that? Okay, how do you understand that part? If I am teaching computer something, like if I tell you machine learning, what is machine learning in very simple terms, not in technical terms, in very simple terms, what is machine learning? Machine learning is like, if I have a machine, like that's of course my computer, I am teaching it, say, hey, this is apple, okay, this is banana, and suppose this is car. So first time I am teaching it. Okay, I'm showing it. Hey, this is apple, banana, and car. Right? And next time when it sees a car, I expect that it should say that it's a car. So that means if I have expected that my machine has learned something, how does it do that? Okay, and if you go by the very foundational technique, how this is done, it's all based on inference. The machine keeps on learning based on developing inference. Okay, and inference is something which comes under the topic of logic. Okay, and that's something we'll study in this course. Especially we'll be studying proportional logic and first order logic. Okay, and you can see where at the back end it's going to be connected. Like down the lane, when you study AI, when you study machine learning, nobody will teach you logic at that time, because they assume that you have already known the basics. There they will talk about algorithms, they'll talk about knn, regression, so on and so forth. But all those algorithms, as I said, fundamentally lie on these techniques like logic. Okay, second thing which is discussed in this module is proof. How do you prove something? Like we have some theorem, like in maths we have seen our, in higher secondary schools we have theorems. How do you prove it? What are the different techniques by which we can prove something? If some of you might recall, like how did we prove that this is irrational in high school mathematics? Anyone recalls? What was the proof that we used to prove? Yeah, mathematical is one technique, but I think square root too we did using contradiction, right? Like we showed, uh, yeah, it's not equal to p by q and so on, right? So all these techniques you might have seen in your high secondary school. But what we'll see today is how they are relevant to computer science. Okay, and this proof and logic, if you look by the practical applications, you'll find their use in artificial intelligence, as I already gave you an example. You'll also see their use in database management system. Okay, and where in database management system? So what is database? Like anything you have, any knowledge you have about database? What is database? Anyone? Anyone knows anything about database? Like, yeah, exactly. Like it's some kind of storage wherein you have some data, right? So, like from your current knowledge, I can give you an example of Excel. Say, okay, so suppose I have an Excel sheet. It's not exactly database, just so that I can connect with you. So in Excel, suppose I make a database of this class. Okay, so I have enrollment, I have name, and suppose I have marks. So this is also a database because it's storing some data for me, right? So in database, when you study this course, you will see that there are a lot of operations that we perform on database, okay, which are known as queries. Suppose I'll ask, return me all the names of students who have marks greater than 50 or less than 50 or between say 50 and say 60. So this is a query I'll ask database. Okay, so all those queries in database are essentially written in logic. Okay, so you will see when you study database, you are again going to hit logic. Similarly, if someone goes on the architecture side or on the electronics side, the circuit design, which you will study in digital electronics course, you will see that again there you will be hitting back logic, proportional logic, first order logic. Okay, so all this proof and logic is very important for all these subjects that you study. Even in algorithm, like in algorithm, when you propose an algorithm, to prove that it's a good algorithm, you would require some proof techniques, right? So basically the motive of this whole module will be, the objective will be so that you are able to reason things mathematically. You know, there's no hand waving going on. Whatever you are given, a theorem or a proof, you are able to reason it rigorously, and you are going to learn basic proof techniques. Okay, so that is kind of motivation behind this proof and logic, which I think will be our second lecture module. Okay, so any questions about this? It's kind of still introduction, but any questions, please feel free to stop me. Okay. Okay, so I assume there are no questions. So next lecture module which we'll be studying is something about counting. Okay, and by counting I don't mean just head count, but counting actually covers all these topics. Things like sets, functions, permutation, combination, and recursion. Okay, out of this, these are not actually in your BTech syllabus, but if we get time, we'll go through it because these are also very powerful techniques. But this is going to be your first lecture module. Okay, so what is the use of counting? So in general, counting principles are normally used to design efficient systems. Okay, so if you're a computer scientist, you're an IT engineer, at the end of the day you are supposed going to design some systems. Okay, but if those systems are not efficient, then they are of no use, right? So the principles that you study in this unit are going to help you design it. Okay, and as mentioned, the applications of this module are going to be in probability, algorithms, and even in data structures, making efficient data structures. Okay, and the objective also of this course module is going to be to help you learn the basic concepts of sets and functions. Okay, so can you see this diagram? Anyone can infer what this diagram is doing? Just have a look at it. Any idea what is this doing? The picture on the right, class, you can type on the chat box. Okay, someone please type on the chat box, so that I know who is speaking and there is no. Okay, very good. Excellent. Exactly. This is a sorting going on, right? So, and wow, someone has written exactly the sort. It's merge sort. That's true. So, this is a sorting algorithm, right? And since one of the person already written, so I'll also mention it. It's a special sorting algorithm called merge sort, which is one of the efficient sorting algorithms, right? Now, what is sorting? Sorting means I'm going to, I have a bunch of numbers and I need to rearrange them in a particular order, ascending or descending, right? So even if you have not studied algorithms, you can think of number of ways by which you can do it, right? Any idea how we can do it apart from how it's being done here? Any wild idea how we can sort numbers? Don't tell me the name of sorting algorithm. Like, what would be the trivial way if you had to sort these numbers? How would you do it? Anyone? What could be an easy way to sort the numbers quickly? Forget about merge sort, like, right? What would be your idea? Keep on comparing. Okay, so that is one. You have some third variable and maybe you keep on comparing, right? So that is one approach of doing it, right? Other approach is maybe, you keep on comparing the adjacent elements and swap. Exactly. Compare two adjacent numbers from start and keep on swapping. So this is another idea. Third idea is what you see on the screen, right? And there are a couple of more sorting algorithms. So all these four, five, six algorithms are ultimately helping you to sort, right? Then why do you have four algorithms? Why not just one? Did you ever think about it? Like, why, if everyone is doing the sorting? Exactly. Efficiency, speed, which one is faster? Okay, so suppose I tell you that merge sort is the fastest, which is actually very efficient also, right? So definitely if some option one and option two are very time consuming, you will definitely opt for merge sort, right? So how do you determine which algorithm is faster or slower, right? That also boils down to the principles we study in counting. Okay, and that's how this topic relates back to algorithms. Okay, is that clear more or less, right? Where those applications lie? Okay, excellent. So now coming to the last major module in this course, which as I said is one of the more important parts in this course, is graph theory. Okay, and graph theory, not just as simple computer science students or IT students, but even for researchers. Graph theory currently is the most trending things, which has been combined with things like machine learning and AI. Okay, so having a realization or this logical concept of how you're going to model problems, real world problems of graphs is very, very important. Okay, and that's what you're going to learn in this course. In this course you're going to study a graph and its different properties: degree sequence, eulerian graphs, special kinds of graphs called trees, and things like matching, coloring, all these things. Okay, and you will see that although while you study this you will find this theoretical and mathematical, but all of this is going to have practical applications. Okay, and practical application in domains like computer networks, circuit design, data structures, and so on. Okay, so I'll end this on very two interesting examples. Okay, so you can see the last image here on the screen, which we had discussed yesterday also. This is basically a computer network which has been modeled by a graph. Okay, and again, if I want to send data efficiently from one PC to another PC, what kind of graph property should I be using? Right, anyone? Like, if I have modeled a computer network in form of a graph and I want to send data efficiently from, say, PCA to PCC, right, what property of graph should I use? What should I try to focus on? What do I need to find if I want to solve this question, how to send data efficiently from A to C? Excellent. I'll go back to the graph of this computer network, wherein the nodes are the PCs or the servers, and the links are the edges or connections, and I'll find the shortest path, right? So, by the shortest path property of the graph, I can answer this question easily, right? So, that was one application. Okay, now let us move to this very interesting application, which is how to color a map. Okay, so you can see this map. Everyone recognizes what is this map? Which country's map is it? Anyone? Yeah, US, right? So you can see what are we doing. Do you observe anything what we are doing? Any specific property by which I'm coloring it? Anything you notice? I'm coloring different states of US by different colors. Yes, but if you observe one property, none of the adjacent states, no, it's not going to weather. It is, if you observe a property, none of the adjacent states are having same color. Okay, so you can see if there is a green, none of its bordering states will have a green. Do you all observe it? You can see none of the adjacent states are having same color. Right, so you can see, like, if I choose this state, it is having a border common with this and this, but you can see all of them have a different color. Okay, this is a standard problem in graphs called coloring problem. Okay, wherein what you do, suppose I have a graph, I'll take a simple one. Okay, and I asked you the question, how many colors do I need such that no adjacent, do you understand adjacent? Adjacent basically means which has a common edge with them. Okay, so how many colors do I need such that none of the adjacent nodes get same color? Okay, so this can be mapped back to this. So this kind of problem we'll also study in graph theory. Okay, right now I told you a problem in graph theory, that is coloring problem. Right, what is coloring problem? Coloring problem is, given a graph, you need to ensure that no adjacent nodes get same color, and I showed you how this can be applied on US coloring the states. Now, just to kind of see your modeling mind, can you model it? Can you think of any practical application where this could be used? Color the states in such a way that no state gets adjacent color. Any practical application that you can think where this could be applied? Just do a little bit of brainstorming and think, where could this be practically applied, that I am coloring the states such that no two states get same you know color. Any practical application you can think of? Anyone? I'll give you a number of applications, but I just want to kind of brainstorm your mind to think, where could it be relevant? What we are saying is, जो भी आपके neighbors हैं, they all should be somehow different. They should not have something similar. Where could it be used? I mean, your answer can be wrong. Don't worry. I am just interested in Sudoku. No, what I meant was here, Arsh, that where could this be used? Some practical problem that I want to map a color. I want to color a map such that no two states get something same. Okay, so Faisal said voting, right? So, voting, I can, yeah, this is great. Entrance exam, distribution of paper sets, right? But this could be in a classroom. You are talking about graph coloring problem. Exactly, these are the applications we have. How many sets do you make so that no adjacent students get same paper? Excellent. But what I was talking was about the map. If I want to color a country's map with this property, where could I use this in terms of a country? Right? All the answers that Shriya, Iftika, and all have given, they are like of graph coloring, right? Now, if I look at the coloring of map, one very nice application could be in, suppose I want to create some antennas, okay, and I want to direct them in such a way that they don't interfere with each other. Okay, so suppose I make an antenna here, and I have to run it on. This is a practical project. Recently, US Defense Department got this project. Okay, so uh, this is not a simple problem. So what I'm saying is, in this state, I want to run a tower, and I have to take some frequencies. Okay, and I have to choose limited number of different frequencies so that I can avoid interference. So how many different frequencies should I use so that this state does not interfere with any other state? Can anyone tell me? Like if I want to avoid interference, what could be the possible number of different frequencies for this state? Yeah, it would be the number of neighbors, which I guess is one, two, three, four, five, and then one for itself, right? So basically this is one application where actually uh, you have limited number of frequencies, so you want to minimize the number of frequencies you use. Okay, so you can see if this is suppose using say 10, 20, 30, 40 hertz of frequency, some far away state can also use it because there will be no interference. Only problem of interference will be with the neighboring states. Okay, so this is not important if you don't understand it, but it's just that I want to tell you that all these things which we think are just numbers or problems in mathematics actually have, you know, very strong foundation in practical problems. You can solve real world problems here. That's also very nice, Zishan. Resolving conflicts, you know, if you suppose want to suppose there is some conflicting representative who's going to be had or something, you want to distribute things into the state so that there is no conflict. So you know, number of your neighbors could be the maximum things you choose so that there is no conflict. So all these basically are practical applications where this course is going to lead you. Okay, so that's it about the motivation part. So this is your course syllabus. It looks very boring like this, but that's why I pushed. That's true. Okay, that's why I pushed motivation before the this theoretical syllabus. So don't get bogged down by these mathematical quantities. Whenever you get bored by this, you should remember these good applications, right? Which you can target always. Okay, so these are some of the textbooks which we are going to refer. Uh, Whichever one I'll be referring for a specific module, as I said, I'll be mentioning in web page, so it shouldn't be an issue. So these are basically the four main objectives which you should target in this course. Okay, learn the basic mathematical concepts, sets, functions, graphs. Learn how to reason formally, mathematically. Okay, which is using logics and proofs, and improve your problem solving skills by using things like induction and recursion. Okay, and the last one, which is super important but most of the time it's skipped by students, is every time you study something, make connections with the computer science problem. Okay, and I'll make sure that all the units we study, at the end we always go back to the computer science applications. Okay, you can see a lot of these things you have already studied in your high school maths, like sets, relations, combinations. But what you need to today do in this course is make connections with computer science problems. Okay, and it's like at the end of this course, you should not just be knowing some mathematical stuff, but you should also know where to apply that practically. All right, is that clear? So that actually ends our introductory module. Any questions, class there? And then I can start with LaTeX. Any questions? Yes, Ash, you have any question, Ash? Yes, no? You said a yes. Oh, you meant yes that you understood. Okay. Sure. You mean this Sirtika? So this is available on your course web page as well. So last unit is not in your syllabus. If we get time, we'll cover it. Otherwise, the remaining ones are there in your syllabus. Okay, great. So don't worry, I'll be sharing all these PPTs with you. You'll have a hold of this. Okay. All right. So now what we are up to is later. Okay, is the LaTeX screen visible to everyone? It is the Google Jamboard. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do, let me just introduce the LaTeX for you. So before I introduce LaTeX, I'll again revise why we require LaTeX. So LaTeX is, you will be using LaTeX for making your assignments, your tutorials, and it's not just for this subject. In the long run, you know, towards the end, when you are about to graduate, you have to write a BTech thesis. So all that can be done using LaTeX. Okay, so for this course, your mathematical stuff writing can be done using LaTeX. Okay, and what I'll be doing, I'll start with tutorial. Once we move to hands-on session, I'll ask you to switch there. Okay, but anytime, any questions you have, please let me know. Okay, so class, since it's an online class, I always feel like I'm talking to balls. Okay, so if at any point of time, you know, you don't understand anything, please stop me. You know, in offline classes, I can see your face and I can get to know you didn't understand. But in online class, the only way I can get your feedback is from you. Okay, so I've given veto right to all of you to stop me at any point of time where you think I'm going fast or you didn't understand anything. Okay, so please help me in that part. Rohit, the tech editor, whatever I had shared the link, all of them can also work for Windows. I'm not sure about Windows 7, but in any case, like for today's session, you can use the online editor overlay. Okay, and I'll also check for Windows 7, it should work. I think TechMaker and Tech Studio works for Windows 7. All right. Uh, so let us start with LaTeX. Okay, so first question, what is LaTeX actually, right? So what is LaTeX? Let me just use the pen. So LaTeX is nothing but a nice question, son. So it is because the people who gave this said that X should be pronounced as K, and that puts a full stop, right? Because if they have given this name, so that's how people pronounce it at LaTeX. I think it also comes from Latin, wherein X is just sounded as K. Okay, so what is LaTeX? So LaTeX is basically a document preparing system. It's a little slow on sharing. So it's a document preparing system, and it's essentially used to produce very professional looking documents. And I'll show you a picture how professional documents produced by LaTeX look like. And what is LaTeX? It is nothing but a document processing system, which means it's same as Word. You know, if you are using Windows, or if you are using Ubuntu, it's same as LibreOffice, or those using Mac, it's same as Apple Pages, right? So question is, why LaTeX? Why not all these things? You know, because from our earlier age, we have been using all these, Microsoft Word or LibreOffice or Apple Page, whichever OS you keep on working, right? So why LaTeX? Why not any of these systems? What makes LaTeX special and not these systems where we normally make our reports and all? Right, so I think that should be your question in your mind currently, and this graph should summarize it for you. Okay, so this was a study done by John Hopkins University, wherein the performance of MS Word and LaTeX was compared. Okay, so if you look at the x-axis, it is the document complexity and size, and this is the efforts and time consumption. So you can look that LaTeX has an initial learning period. So in the beginning, the amount of effort that LaTeX will take from you is little higher than, you know, MS Word, right? You can see the start period is little higher, right? But eventually, as the documentation complexity and size increases, LaTeX will move on smoothly. But Word is going to get complex, right? And I can give you a best example of this is like if you have to write a project report, right? Like you have to do in your final year BTech thesis. There you have to like kind of manage like 50, 60. Some people also write 100-page thesis, right? And there you have things like a lot of figures, table of contents. Every time you change one page, you have to change everything. So for larger projects, Word becomes very difficult to handle. And especially if you have mathematical equations and all, it becomes troublesome. But in LaTeX, once you are done with the learning period and you keep on using it, you'll see that LaTeX will smoothly move all the typesetting issues. Okay, typesetting means, arranging your figures, arranging your document, all those things are automatically done by LaTeX, which is not there so in Word or other softwares. Okay, and that's where LaTeX comes in the picture. It solves all your typesetting problems. Okay, and just to give you a brief history, which is very important also, that all the inventions that we have had in this century or over the previous centuries, they've always been based on some necessity. Like there's a very famous quote that necessity is the mother of invention. Actually, LaTeX has a very interesting story. Can anyone recognize who this person is? Does anyone know who this person is? Being a computer science student, anyone? Okay, so let me tell that those who are interested in algorithms, he is known as father of algorithms, and those who are very interested in programming, what is often known as Bible of programming. Okay, there's a book called Art of Programming. It is written by this person, and this person is Donald Knuth. Okay, he is a he is a ACM Turing awardee. Right? Does anyone know what is a ACM Turing award at least? Yeah. Anyone knows ACM Turing Award? Yeah, it's after Alan Turing. But anyone knows the significance of this award? Okay, everyone knows Nobel Prize, right? Nobel Prize for Computer Science is ACM Turing Award. Okay, great, Ash. So Nobel Prize for Computers is ACM Turing Award, and both of these persons are actually Turing awardees. Okay, and the first person is Donald Knuth, and he was the first person who developed LaTeX in 1978 based on a low level language called Tech. Okay, and this has a very interesting story. Basically, Knuth is a researcher. He was a researcher in computer science, and he was writing some research papers. And if you had ever experienced that, when you have a lot of images in Word, as soon as you write something, images keep on moving here and there, and he couldn't find correct place for his images. Also, like he has to make the table of contents, list of figures, all of that was boring stuff which he didn't want to make, and any changes he had to make, he had to reflect it. So based on that frustration, he said, why don't I am a computer programmer, why don't I make a some automatic system which will do this job for me, and I am a researcher, I'll just write the content and everything else should be done by this. And thereafter came the product called LaTeX. Okay, so because of being frustrated by managing thing, he gave the world a very interesting open source tool called LaTeX. Okay, and later this person who is Lastly Lamport, again a ACM Turing Award winner, he further in 1978 developed LaTeX into what we see the version today, which is more user friendly. Okay, so I mean this has nothing to do with our course, but it's just to tell you that if some person is not happy with something and he came up with a system, right? That's how things come out, right? Like same kind of history we have for machine learning and AI stuff, that people were bogged down with some issues and they came up with these solutions, right? That's how logical mind works, right? If you are facing a problem, instead of complaining, you try to find a solution. Anyways, so that is how brief history of LaTeX. Now, how do we use LaTeX? Those of you who want to do it offline without dependence on internet, I had already shared the links. You need to distribute, like download the MicTech distribution and any editor. Editor is like a normal editor for tech. So either Tech Studio or Tech Maker, you can use it. But for our today's session, we'll be using Overleaf, okay, which is an online LaTeX editor. Okay, so what I expect all of you to do is I'll be typing the commands in Overleaf and you will be following in me. Okay, because if I just tell you something, you'll forget. This is a very famous quote. If I teach you, you will remember, but if I involve you, you will learn. So what I want is that all of you should learn with me simultaneously. Okay. So now the first thing I want you all to do is open your Overleaf accounts. Okay. You should open that as a parallel tab. Okay. Is everyone on their Overleaf accounts? Please stop me if nobody, if somebody is back, remains behind. Is everyone on the Overleaf account? Excellent. So go to new project and make your choose blank project. Okay, I'll again repeat. Go to this option with green, new project, and choose blank project. Okay, you can see there are a lot of other options. You'll get the standard templates for a book, assignment, poster, presentation, everything. But now let us start with scratch from a blank project. Let me name it as my first LaTeX project. Okay, so you should be redirected to this project. Okay, is everyone on this? Please, everyone, if you at any point are lagging behind, please stop me. Okay, I am assuming by these yes ma'am that everyone is there. Okay, anyone who is lagging behind, please stop me. Is everyone able to see this screen with three different sections? Okay, so this is the PDF that you will be generated from your LaTeX. This is where you will write your commands, and this is some background stuff. So you can just close it by clicking here. We'll keep it just these two windows. Okay, and one setting that you need to do is in this let me just increase the size. So here you can see there is this drop down menu. Keep the option auto compile on. Okay, by this whatever you type it will immediately be compiled. Okay, and what you do, you just delete everything here because we'll start from scratch. Let it be like this. Okay, everyone is set up with the environment. Okay, so let me now introduce you to the LaTeX. Okay, so in LaTeX what you're going to do is, it is basically a language which is based on commands. Okay, that is why the learning period in the beginning is little difficult, but as and when you start working you will get to know the commands on your own. Okay, and in LaTeX, like HTML, some commands are paired commands which will have a starting, add, and ending, and some are unpaired commands which will be there as it is without any ending. Okay, so like if you look at this screen, you can see there is a paired command begin document. So anything which starts with a begin will definitely have an end. Okay, like in HTML you had, suppose you had body and then you close the body, right? Similarly in LaTeX, any command which begins with a backslash begin and then something should definitely have an end. Okay, that's something you should always remember. And then there are some unpaired commands like you have here. They don't have a begin, so they just start there as it is. There's no pairing command. Okay, now the things that you see on the screen is how you make your very simple LaTeX document. Okay, so so anything which you write between this document class and begin document, this is known as your preamble. Okay, and this is something which will not be printed. All the extra stuff that you require for structuring your document, that is written between this. Okay, and anything you write between this begin and end document is something which is going to get printed and is your content. Okay, I repeat, two things I said. There are two kinds of commands in LaTeX, paired and unpaired. Paired ones always begin with a backslash begin and they have a pairing backslash end. And other category of commands is unpaired commands, like you can see here, which don't have an ending part. They are just there as it is. Second thing that I said is anything you write between a begin document and this document class is known as preamble. This will not be printed on your PDF. It will be just there for support or structuring of your document. And anything you write within this begin and end document will be your content. Okay. Now let us try to write this command in our LaTeX and generate our first document. Okay. Please let me know if the font of my editor is visible to you. Is this visible or should I increase it? Where I am writing? Is it visible, class? Or should I increase the font? Let me just increase it. This should be fine. Okay. So what is the command you need to write? Need to write document. As soon as you write document, you will see, you will automatically get a comma. It will predict what command you want to write. Okay. So just click on this document class and let us say it's article. Okay. And then begin document. So it will automatically show an end document. And within this, whatever I will write, that is my content. And suppose I write hello world. Okay, and it will compile and you will be able to see the result. Okay. So whatever you write between begin document and end document, that will be your generated PDF. Okay. Please, I want everyone to do it in parallel. Okay, once you have done it, please let me know so that I can proceed. Okay, excellent. Okay, now let me add some more things, like now how do you add title of the document, author and date, things like those. Okay, so for this, what you need to do for adding the title, you just write the command title and then write the title of the document. Say suppose I'll write my first document. Okay, so backslash title and then in curly braces write whatever title you want to keep for your document. And if I want to add the author name, I'll write backslash author and your name. Suppose I'll write my name. And then for date, I'll write backslash date. Even if I write backslash date, it will give me the date. Okay, you can see none of this is being reflected here because you need to necessarily write a command called make title to compile anything which is written before this document. Okay, let me write say today. Okay, so let me just repeat what I did. So if you look at this between document class and begin document, I said we do the preamble. Okay, preamble is it's not the content of the document, it is only what is the supporting part of the document. Okay, so there are three main things which normally we require for documents. One is title, author and date. Okay, and the commands for it are very trivial, same thing, backslash title, backslash author, backslash date. Okay, so whatever you write between this preamble, between document class and begin document, it will not be displayed. You will see that until and unless you write this, you will not be getting this output. Okay, so whenever you write anything in your preamble, make sure after begin document you write this command make title. So what will this command do? It will compile all of this and you can get your output. Okay, so please compile this preamble part. Yes, yes, these are case sensitive. You normally your commands are all in lower case. Okay, this is a very nice point, Dishan. All the commands are in lower case only. See, in general, all your commands are in lower case. Okay, some commands may have variants which may work, but a good habit is always to keep them in lower case until specifically, some command asks you a particular case. Keep them all lower case. Okay, there are about 68 students. Please, I expect everyone to do it parallelly. Okay, if you want to remove date, uh, you can't just write it. So you just have to remove today, but keep on writing that word date. Then it will be removed. Okay, Rahul? If you remove the date completely, it will not be removed. Okay, you can remove it only if you keep the curly braces blank. Okay, and if you want to comment out something, you can put a percent sign in front of it. Okay, so percent is for comment. Okay, you can see if I, yes, it automatically detects it. So if you want to remove date completely, keep it with a curly brace, empty curly brace, then it will remove it. And if you want to enforce some date, not today's date, some other date, you can simply type it inside. So we saw three versions of date. If you ignore date, you will get today's date. If you write backslash date today, again you will get today's date. If you keep the empty curly braces, you will have no date. Okay, very nice question. Okay, I'll come to this now, not today, tomorrow. But in any case, I'll show you how to do it. Okay, it's with a backslash. It's a very nice question. Okay, sir. We'll do it in detail tomorrow with a backslash, because if you keep just percent, it will consider it as comment. Okay, is everyone done? I'll just at least finish up with sectioning today. This is a very interesting feature of LaTeX. Because I'm waiting for your response. Is everyone done with this structure till this point? Okay, I think I should ask the question in the reverse direction. Is there anyone who is left behind? So that only the answer. And please don't feel shy to say, yes, we are left behind. It's okay. Okay, if you are left behind, your friends will also be left behind. Okay, just stop me. Okay, I'll stop even if there's one person. Sure, sure. Uh, Kundan, just type it quickly and let me know. Yes. Oh, so how do you manage your other? Are you doing it in your? Yes, Overleaf works on Android also. Okay. Okay. So what you do, so that you don't lag behind, you can start a blank project. It will automatically show these things. Okay, but whatever I'm showing next, please follow on that. Okay, so next, the first feature of LaTeX which we are going to discuss is something called sectioning. So if you have seen till your 12th class or till this point very nice books, you will see they are very nicely sectioned. You have chapters, and then within chapters you have sections, say section 1, and then you have subsections, this 1.1 and so on. and sometimes you even have subsections, 1.1.1 and so on. Very good books are always very nicely sectioned, separating out everything differently, right? How do we do this sectioning in LaTeX? Okay, for this, the commands are very direct. If you want to create a section, you do \section and you put a name of that section. Similarly, if you want to do a subsection, you write subsection and name of that subsection. Okay, and it's an unpaired command. Okay, similarly, if you want to do a subsection, so you have subsection, that's it. Okay, and after that you have paragraph. Sure, Kundan, I will be uploading it, don't worry. And then you can also have paragraphs which don't have these numberings. Okay, so let me now do it on LaTeX so that you can also do it. So let me make our first section. Suppose I'll say introduction. Okay, and suppose I'll say hello, and then within this I have a subsection which is suppose college, second subsection which is about me, maybe a subsection. I'll come to your question in a second. Suppose schooling and section, suppose statistics. Okay, let me just write everything and then I'll come to your questions. Okay, so that's right. So it's to distinguish, right? To how do you distinguish that? Also, this is the beauty of LaTeX, right? You didn't tell it what font to use, right? But it will automatically choose a font style so that you're able to differentiate between a section and a subsection and a subsection. You know, you can see the difference. If I just slightly zoom in, you can see how differently it has used a font for a section, for a subsection and a subsection. It keeps on decreasing it, so you can see it's automatically taken all of this, right? And one of the, like, I normally call that as magic of LaTeX is, now if you have to generate its table of contents, has ever anyone generated table of contents in Word? It's really a painful exercise unless you use some automatic command. Okay, so you can easily generate table of contents here with just a single command. Okay, you just have to write \table of contents and you will see your table of contents will be generated. Okay, just like a magic, it's just there. Okay, so all that typesetting, to have appropriate dots, appropriate indentation, you have thousands page of books, just write this command table of contents and you are done. Tens of thousands of pages of a table of contents will be generated on their own. And if I change, suppose I move this to page number 2, they will automatically be generated, so you don't have to manually keep on changing this. Okay, so you can appreciate this, how for very large projects it's useful. You can just correct it. It's showing error maybe because of it. Just correct the spelling of subsection. Okay, so you can see how table of contents will be generated just by this command without any of your efforts. Okay, and since it's already 11, I'll stop. Please complete this part